Buonasera, iniziamo oggi il secondo seminario sulla medicina e la psicologia. Ma prima di iniziare il seminario vorrei dare delle informazioni perché ieri ci sono poi arrivate tante domande e allora a questo punto sarebbe il caso di dare delle informazioni tecniche che io do sia a tutti gli utenti sia agli studenti dell'orientale. In effetti questo seminario sta riscuotendo un grandissimo successo perché abbiamo addirittura 974 iscritti e ieri a un certo punto si sono collegate ben 913 persone, quindi è veramente un grandissimo, come dire, risultato in termini di comunicazione, però è anche chiaro che quando ci sono tante connessioni può capitare che ci siano delle interferenze, delle difficoltà, eccetera. Quindi cerchiamo di superarle. Oggi dovrebbe andare tutto meglio, spero. Dunque, quello che volevo dirvi è che molti non si sono resi conto che questi webinar sono tutti tradotti in inglese per quando si parla in italiano e in italiano quando appunto l'ospite parla in inglese. Dovete andare sul basso del vostro schermo dove c'è scritto interpretazione e cliccare sulla lingua in cui voi volete ricevere, appunto, volete sentire il seminario. Questa è una cosa importante, spero che abbiate raggiunto tutti, riuscite a visualizzare il pulsantino. Poi un'altra cosa importante è che noi avremo alla fine di questa sessione, cioè delle due sessioni, dei due ospiti, avremo le domande e risposta, però nel frattempo dovreste mandare, quindi scrivere nella chat le vostre domande che poi noi dovremo selezionare perché ovviamente non abbiamo tantissimo tempo, oggi avremo intorno ai 20 minuti e quindi dovremo selezionare alcune domande in modo da avere un contatto più diretto con i nostri ospiti. Un'altra cosa che vi voglio dire è che per coloro che dovessero perdere il seminario o qualcuno dei seminari, di non preoccuparsi perché poi alla fine dei 5 seminari, dei 5 webinar, saranno pubblicati probabilmente sul canale YouTube sia dell'associazione Asia, del sito di Asia, sia del sito dell'Orientale, quindi poi dopo potrete recuperare, se avrete voglia anche di ascoltare qualche lezione, potrete farlo. Alla fine della sessione, quindi alla fine quando noi chiudiamo il webinar, dovete aspettare un secondo perché vi apparirà un sondaggio. Allora io vi chiedo per favore a tutti quelli che oggi sono in connessione di rispondere al sondaggio perché in effetti è un dato utile per appunto per questo evento. È importante che siano fatti i sondaggi. Di solito le persone si annoiano, si scocciano, noi sappiamo benissimo anche per gli studenti dell'orientale spesso non rispondono ai sondaggi, ma invece sono dati importanti. Gli studenti però, quelli che sono iscritti ai seminari anche per ricevere i crediti per le attività formative, riceveranno alla fine dei 5 seminari un altro questionario a cui dovranno rispondere per poi ricevere l'attestato. Ecco, allora spero che tutto sia chiaro e mi appresto a introdurre la nostra prima ospite che è la professoressa Phuntsog Wangmo. Allora, Phuntsog Wangmo è una carissima amica che conosco da tanti anni ed è una delle più, diciamo, autorevoli esponenti della medicina tibetana che noi abbiamo in Occidente. Si è formata in Tibet, ha una profonda educazione di medicina classica tibetana ma poi è arrivata appunto in Occidente, prima in Italia e poi adesso risiede negli Stati Uniti e ha fondato anche appunto, è direttore dell'istituto che si chiama Istituto Shanjun, ehm, scuola di medicina dell'istituto Shanjun, e poi lei insegna medicina tibetana, ha fatto seminari insomma, in tutte le parti del mondo, è sempre molto richiesta e molto attiva, e ha anche fondato, è una delle cofondatrici dell'associazione tibetana, associazione americana di medicina tibetana. Quindi lavora a livello professionale come medico tibetano, appunto negli Stati Uniti dove risiede. Quindi per noi è un grande onore avere lei oggi come nostra ospite e penso che sia appunto una lezione veramente interessante. Grazie moltissimo per aver partecipato e per essere con noi, e allora lascio la parola alla dottoressa Phuntsog Wangmo.
Hello, good morning. Um, First of all, I want to say it's really honored to be on this panel. My name is Phuntsog Wangmo. I'm at the Shangshung School of the Tibetan Medicine. When I'm here, the University of the Napoli, I feel is very close to my life. I think not only me, but also many other Tibetan spiritual scholars, they feel very close to the um, the Naples University because it's the one of the best scholars in the world. Namgyal Nobu Rinpoche, he worked at the Naples University. For sure, he studied from that university, introduced the Tibetan language, Tibetan culture, either common cultures or uncommon knowledge, the Tibetan introduced to the worldwide. For sure, also many people, many young students who never heard before Tibet or Tibetans, they also learned new culture, new knowledge, new language from him through that the schools. So for this kind of reason, when I hear or when I'm sort of like feeling, when I hear the words of the Naples University, we feel sort of like very close to our lives. So for that reason, when I heard Professor Giacomella organizing this conference, I was really, it's really determined to be participate this conference. Today's my topic is interdependence, body, mind, and health. Before go to my topic, I just want to say one words, part of like the history of the Tibetan medicine. Tibetan medicine, origins of the Tibetan medicine is not from China, also not from India. It is came from land of the Tibet through the ancestors of the Tibetans. So that is today's my like history of the Tibetan medicine. Because many people think maybe the root of the Tibetan medicine came from somewhere else. Of course, we have a lot of influenced neighbor countries healing modalities or healing knowledge into our Tibetan medicines. Because Tibetan medicine is a very holistic, or we say is very integrative a healing. So since I have today like 20 minutes, I will try to put my topic into as much as I can make a simplified way. So I thought is put into sort of like the Four Noble Truths. and then through that make a little easy way. Of course, I do not have a such a high capacity to explain all the Four Noble Truths, but today is my topic. I will try to put with that and I try to make it simplified. So the first, the noble of the truth is suffering. In the Tibetan medicine, what we say, mina wanne bundu bada nawa so wande be kansa ga so wade be mangala labar chao. So if you want to be healthy, be happy, you should study of the medicine or healing. If you don't study or if you ignore, then you will have suffering. So this is sort of like that started. When we're talking the suffering, suffering is a very universal a words. Everybody knows what is the suffering. Either we had our own experience of the suffering, or we hear someone suffering, or we saw someone suffering. So suffering is a very universal. Also, we all we don't like to be suffering. Does not matter who you are, where you live, which religion you believe, which culture you have, which type of life you have. We all equally we don't like to be suffering, but we do not know how should prevent, how should avoid the suffering. For that reason, what the Buddha said, kunjung sheparcha, so need to learn the origins of the suffering. In the Tibetan medicine also we say that before to be suffering or to learn the suffering, need to learn the cause of the sufferings. What will be the cause? An example, if you're not able to sleep, I think today in our society, big number of the people having problems with the suffering. I mean the sleep. The sleep is a suffering. Why sleep is a suffering? Because through the sleep, then we get a lot of problems. Through the sleep, we're not able to relax. Through the not able to sleep, we're losing memories. Our sense organ became unclear or blurry, dysfunctions. Whole our body is aching, not able to focus to either study or work. And in the meantime, also declines all the body systems, include digestive functions. All those kind of things can causing from the simple not able to sleep. Why is that? That the simple sleep has such a high impact to the health. In our body is composed by five elements. Once those five elements, like earth, water, fire, wind, and space, once those five elements, it is if they're balanced, we will have a good, healthy, good, happy, good life. Once those five elements is not balanced, then they will attacking each other. At the time, we will have also sufferings. Same as like outer nature. If the outer nature is balanced, we will have good spring, good summer, good crops, and we will be happy. But if they're not balanced well, then we will have like the natural disasters. Same like that we also in our body. So when you're not able to sleep, simple sleep can impact a lot of health problems when we look at why happened. Which means is in our body, the wind element or the energies of the wind is too high. How we know that? because it's that the wind has the nature, it's a light, rough, mobile, and cold. Also more, but simple those kind of. We call the lungatini yangshi yoga, so light mobile is like the natures of the lung, of the wind. Once in our body have a lot of these things, then we will have the problems of not able to calm down, not able to focus, not able to sleep. So this is that the origin, sort of like the cause, which we call the gunjong. Once we have those kind of things, once the lung is in my body, if that access, then I have these kind of problems. If my wind is not access, I will have very good energy, morning able to wake up, evening able to sleep, daytime I have all the good memories, full of energy, full of activities, and then my energy sort of like a flower, like a blooming. But once I don't have that one, too much of energies in my body, too light, too rough, not able to grounding. What that means is wind element access, but earth, the water element, is deficiency. Meantime, also, maybe also the fire element also little bit lack of, little bit of like deficiency. Why this the wind element access and the other element is a deficiency? Could be caused by the diet, could be also caused by the behavior, could be also caused by the environment, could be also your lifestyle. So could be there also secondary conditions, but the main condition origin of the not able to sleep is that your wind element is access. So this one is that the second noble tooth, sort of like a kunjung, like a softening of origins, same as like that way, which we call is that the neki gyugin tapar chava, so like to observe that cause. Once we found, okay, I'm not able to sleep, that causing me a lot of problems. I feel, not only I feel, but also my families, co-workers, colleagues, children's members, neighbors, also they can see how I'm dealing with. So I definitely, deeply, I have a wish, desire, overcome from my sleep issue, but I do not know how. If you want to come over from that sleep problem, first thing what we need to know, we need to know what is the cause. So now we know what is cause. Cause of the not sleep is wind is high. Why wind is high? Could be diet, could be behave, could be also lifestyle, environment, so on and so forth. How you know that? Because is I'm observing your characters, your natures, your complexions, so on and so forth. I see that one. So this is sort of like that the first and the second. In order to finding this the second one, like that the origin, sometimes you may able to understand by yourself if you are well trained, but most of the time we need to ask to someone, which we call is good to see a doctor, experts. Tell them that I'm not able to sleep, what will be the cause? And then this sort of like explained by the doctors because your problem is lung because of cause of this. Now, once we found the cause of the not able to sleep, now what we need to know, how I can prevent. So that is like that the Buddhism, what the Buddha say is that the truth of path. So now I need to learn sort of like the how should put back to the normal way. So to put back to the normal way, first what we need to know is what is characteristic of the lung. Again, as I said before, lung is light, rough, mobile, and also cold. In general, lung has 6 characteristics, but some of those are not so easy to understand immediately. Once I know, okay, lung is rough, that makes sense. Also, my skin is more dry recently. That makes sense. I have more like tendency anger. Nature of the lung is light. That makes sense. I cannot settle down. I cannot sleep. Nature of the lung is mobile. That also makes sense because I'm not able to rest. What they call restless. I became like restless. I have many projects not able to manage to finish none of them because I cannot sit down and do things. I lost all the calm, peace. So those kind of, I became completely like scattered, my mind. Nature of the lung is cold. That makes sense. Energy aspect or mental aspect, I became a little cold, not opened, not warm heart. Cause of that also many of my friend is sort of like go away from me. I'm not able to make more friends. Physically also I feel more cold. I need to wear more blankets, more jackets. So those are the signs of the lung access. I know these kind of things because I have this kind of knowledge. So now I'm telling you. So now what I can do. So this is sort of like if you want to find the treatment, antidote, first we need to know what is access, how I know. Once we know these kind of things, now it's very easy to get a antidote. Once we know the origin of the cause, now it's easy to at least easy to get a idea of the antidote. Okay, so lung is light, rough, cold, and mobile. What we need? We need is warm, heavy, oily, stable. So those kind of antidote we need to get. Where those kind of all those is in our food, in our behave, because it's all the what we eating food is grown by 5 elements. There is no specific food has those kind of quality, and what we eating normally they don't have. No, everything what we eat in daily life, what we dealing, everything is with 5 elements. So, but even though everything grow by the 5 elements, but it's slightly different. What is the difference? Because when I'm looking, there's 6 tastes. It's not all in 1 or 2 tastes. I understand everything grow by the 5 elements, but when I go to eat food, there are 6 tastes, basically. And then there's many more. They come like 2 taste, 3 taste, 4 taste. So then there's much more. Why those 6 tastes? The 6 taste is the combinations of predominant 2 elements. They're producing sort of like 6 tastes. What are the 6 tastes? Like sweet, sour, salty, bitter, hot, and astringent. When we're looking like sweet, it's combinations of the earth and the water element more predominant. When we're looking, the sour taste is the earth and the fire element more predominant. When we're looking, the salty taste is more predominant water and the fire element. When we're looking, the bitter taste is a predominant earth, the wind, and then water element. When we're looking the hot, like the chili pepper, taste predominant fire and wind element. When we're looking the astringent is earth, the wind element, predominant. We say the sajumeza chumichutalu milonsaloni. So of course all the food has the 5 element, but the 2 element more predominant. So now we see, okay, sweet is earth and the water, for sure is heavy, because we know that earth and the water is heavy. Sour is fire with earth, okay, looks like pretty warm, but it may not that light, because this other one is heavy, the earth. Salty is pretty similar with the sour, but when we look in the bitter, water and wind looks like both is cold. But when I'm looking the hot, fire with the wind for sure is warm, but maybe a little bit light because is fire is light, wind is light. But when I'm looking to the astringent, earth and the wind looks like pretty well moderated. I mean the balanced, but a little rough. So now my issue of the not able to sleep, because you told me, you as a doctor, you told me my problem is lung, which is a wind element. So now what I need heavy, warm, oily, and stable food. So the best when we look in the taste is the sweet, because earth and the water element. Sour, fire and the earth element. Salty, water and the fire element. So this three taste is one of the best, like the best taste for my cases. But now when I'm looking, okay, what are they the sweet? Are you talking the sugar sweet? That should I eat? No. All the grain beside the lentils, legumes, is sweet. Rice, barley, wheat, oat, all those is sweet. All the meat production is sweet. Another one also, most of like the dairy product, origin dairy product is sweet. Meantime, also certain green also sweet. So sweet is a huge a topic. Mostly all the protein food is sweet. What are they the sour? All the fermented food, included wine, alcohol, is sweet. Yogurt. All those sort of like sour, sorry. All the salty taste is salty. That is easy to understand. Should I eat all these three food, these three taste? No. Goal is to balance. At the moment when you're not able to sleep time, you should focus more like sweet, sour, this kind of thing. But you should eat all types of food because goal is go back to the normal. So this is sort of like the lamki demba. So now we learned your diet. Meantime, also you need to do sort of like meditations, breathing exercise, relax with a good companion, should not discuss any politics or this like arguing to need to make sort of like calm. Once we learn this one, so this is we call the lamki demba, like the path of like truth of the path. In the Tibetan medicine, what we say, this is sort of like the nyempo treatment. Once we learned these kind of things, now what we need to do? Now we need to apply. Once we learned it is good, but not enough. If I really wanted to get out of the abnormal issue, if I want to my body became like automatic things, now I need to apply those things. In general, our body is like automatic systems. Morning comes able to wake up, evening comes able to sleep, time comes have good appetite, after eat also impure able to go through. It's like automatic. But sometimes our body became sort of like like a manual body. Morning comes, need to take 8 tablets to wake up. Evening comes, need to take another one, put back to sleep. Time to eat, we need to take another one tablet to make open appetite. Next morning, need to take another one to bowel move. If that happened, means is our body system is not working. So for that reason, what I'm trying to saying is that not able to sleep, like that is like that the first sufferings. Cause to knowing that is that the lung or the wind did caused, that is sort of like the kunjung, which is like that origins. To find antidote, that is like a path, and then to apply that and then go back to the normal, that is like the gokpa, so like that the cessations of the suffering. So today this is my topic. I hope it's benefits to the audience. Thank you very much. It's really delighted to be here. I just want to say thank you.
Bene, allora adesso passiamo al secondo ospite, che è il professore Antonino Raffone dell'Università La Sapienza.
Hello, good afternoon or good morning or good evening, depending on your longitude in our planet. So I'm really delighted to have this opportunity of this lecture, of this sharing about interdependence in mind, brain, body interactions. And I would like to thank the organizer, Professor Giacomella Rufino, for this wonderful opportunity of this conference. And so I would like to share this talk, which is about the convergence between neuroscience, cognitive neuroscience, consciousness studies, and also the time-honored Buddhist philosophical and psychological tradition. So I would like to start with Albert Einstein. Maybe you will be surprised, but I think it's remarkable that Professor Albert Einstein he was a great genius of science, of course, with physics, but also a very, very wise person and very sensitive with great humanity. So I go through it. A human being is part of a whole called by us the universe, a part limited in time and space. He experiences himself, his thoughts and feelings, as something separated from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of his consciousness. This delusion is a kind of prison for us, restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest us. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circles of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty. So it's really the idea that in some ways we get stuck in a kind of mental prison with our affections, desire, and we could say the ego view, and we miss our intimate interdependence with others, with other beings, with nature, with the whole universe. And this actually causes suffering to us and causes suffering to the planet, as we see now with the crisis that we have, world crisis with climate change and so on. So going back to the Buddhist psychology view, as I said, very, very refined, still at the standards of current psychology and neuroscience, there is this interesting teaching by the Buddha and about the three poisons of the mind: greed, hatred, and delusion. Actually, let's start from delusion, which is actually regarded as the root of the other poisons of the mind, causing us suffering, which is really about the idea that it's the wrong view about ourselves, about the self as separated from the rest of the world, the rest of the universe, others. So it's and in this way we get this attachment, this clinging to our ego. We become egocentric, and this is the cause, a root cause also of our greed. We want more, or hatred. We have aversion against others, for example, against some conditions of our life. And in this way, you see, this is the symbols for these three poisons of the mind are actually these three animals that you see displayed here. And what is interesting is that they are in a sort of loop of, yes, why not interdependence in a sense, but in this case, interdependence has to be meant as afflictive, as cause of affliction. So in a sense, when we narrow our worldview, our perception of ourself, of our body, mind, in a sense, we lose the broader picture, which actually relates to the healthy mental factors of wisdom and awareness and compassion. So in Buddhist psychology, there is this very refined teaching model about dependent origination or dependent co-arising that actually, according to which there is a chain of causation of factors in the mind-body. So there is this fundamental wrong view or ignorance, as that we were addressing before, that causes mental formations like emotions, like greed, we said before, like motivations or aversion, which influence consciousness and so on. Then later we have, with this kind of protension, and in psychology and neuroscience today, there is emphasis on the so-called predictive coding of the brain, that in some ways we get already before meeting some inputs from the world. We already have some expectations and pretensions about how things should go in the world. And then we have a feeling which can be pleasant or neutral. And if we have pleasant feeling, there is causation of craving, so liking and wanting, so to speak. And then there is this clinging, this kind of drive to an action, for example, of the greed, of the desire, and the actual becoming, which can be acting upon desire, for example, and so on. So to give you an idea about this convergence between this Buddhist, ancient Buddhist model of the mind, it is interesting that this model has been used to understand how our brain becomes addicted, for example, in addiction, through also this kind of codependent arising mechanism, a mechanism of, if you like, of looping, which goes, for example, if there is some positive stimulus, there is this positive effect with pleasant feeling, then there is craving, there is a kind of behavior, for example, grasping something we like and want, liking, wanting, grasping. And in this way, this also gets associated to this sense of me, I, me, mine. So I get identified with the experience. In this way, one can get in this mechanism of conditioned production that, in some sense, can feed further, for example, drive to look for more pleasant reward, for example, through, for example, if we are addicted to some substances or internet, whatever. So, and another example is from neuroscience, affective neuroscience, to show that actually there are in the brain, in the rat, for example, in rats, but also in other animals, in humans as well, there are different hotspots, circuits for liking and wanting that are interdependent, interact with each other. So also resonating with the model of dependent origination that we have seen before. And of course, in Buddhist psychology, there is a lot of emphasis on mental states, so that have deep influence on consciousness. And nowadays in neuroscience, the notion of mental state is getting more and more investigated. For example, with the idea that in mental states, there is interdependence of emotion and cognition. So in a few decades ago, in psychology and neuroscience, we used to separate emotion and cognition. But this was very, in some sense, inadequate to understand our mind and our brain and our behavior, because we know that cognition and emotion are interdependent, deeply interdependent. In this model, even you see the amygdala related to this emotional reactivity, which is highly interactive with the prefrontal cortex, which is involved in attentional control, planning, consciousness, and so on. So you see this interdependence, very intimate, and involving also not only emotion and cognition, but also the body through the autonomic nervous system, and then through the hormonal responses, and then the behavior, the body behavior. So you can see that there are loops and interactions, even according to this model, which I'm displaying here from Salzman and Fusi about mental states. They talk about the entanglement. Entanglement such that the same neurons in this complex system can encode for affective and cognitive dimensions. So you can see how much this interdependence is actually involved in our mental and mind-brain-body system. And also, of course, the notion of mental state, which was really in the center of Buddhist psychology, can lead us to appreciate and investigate more and more this interdependence. Of course, the idea is that when we meditate, we develop more and more awareness and focus, attention, stability of attentional focus, and this awareness in the present moment in the meditation, we can become more and more intimate with this interdependence between the mind and the body. And so I would like to focus now on pain, because pain is, I mean, something which is relevant in our life, not only in human life, but in life of all sentient beings. And according to a very refined Buddhist teaching, is actually there are two arrows of pain. One, which is just, if you like, more bottom-up, will be just more the sensory pain, like in this display, you can see from the red arrow, it's just the pain, the first arrow pain that comes to mind, that comes to the brain. But then there is a top-down endogenous part of the pain, which is displayed here with this green arrow, which is really related to our relationship with pain. It's really mental, we could say related to our mental states, prior experiences, expectations, attention, mood, and so on. So I think it's an experience of everyone, the difference that it makes to cope, to deal with a pain when we are serene, confident, and patient, and by quite a different experience when the same pain is experienced when we are impatient, agitated, frustrated, and so on. It's very, because the interplay, the interdependence of these two arrows of pain is different in these two mental states. And you can see here the levels of interdependence in the so-called pain metrics in different areas of the brain that interact with each other to co-produce the experience of pain. And of course, starting from the spinal cord, the lower levels of the brain, the lower stations like the brainstem, periaqueductal gray, the thalamus, but then there is going up the hippocampus where, for example, memories of pain experiences can come, the amygdala, very important for emotional reactivity, then up to the prefrontal cortex, which is an area where actually we have a kind of judgments, thoughts, and so on. Cingulate cortex, where maybe some kind of identification with that experience can come. somatosensory cortex. And please notice the two directions of the arrows. Most of these arrows are bidirectional, thus suggesting an interactivity which is highly bidirectional, interdependent, and reentrant, we could say. And so let me tell you about the study that we have performed in our lab in collaboration with other universities in Bulgaria and the United Kingdom, with the fortunate participation of Buddhist monks. And this was really actually a pain experiment in which we administered a kind of pain, which was electrical pain. And basically, in each stimulation, of course, we were also recording EEG. And for each stimulation, we were asking the participants, there was this monastic group, but also a control group of short-term meditators, actually, how much pain you have felt from 0 to 100, how much aversion you have felt from 0 to 100, and how much identification you experience. I mean, how much you felt self-caught, self-involved in this experience, each experience of pain-induced pain. So really, we wanted to investigate by these phenomenological reports, and then also correlating to these brain responses through event-related potentials, the actual effects of the mental state of aversion and identification on the pain experience. And so what you can see here actually is that a higher aversion predicted higher pain ratings. And we also performed so-called Granger causality analysis, such that the aversion and identification in the mental state at the trial before predicted the more pain at the subsequent pain stimulus, pain stimulation. So in a sense, it's like when the mind state, the mental states gets driven toward more aversion, being more aversive, or more feeling more identified with the experience, then when pain comes, actually there is a higher experience of pain. And the same is for identification. So in a mental state of feeling more identified, involved with I, me, mine, and again, an experience also was predictive and also in causal analysis terms of the experienced pain. So in a sense, it's a verification in a controlled laboratory condition of this ancient model of the two arrows of pain that was beautifully advanced by the Buddha and his followers. Okay, and in Buddhist psychology, there is a beautiful emphasis on the aggregates, the so-called 5 aggregates of experience of the mind-body. And nowadays, in neuroscience, in cognitive and affective and social neurosciences, we talk about brain networks, which in a sense are kind of neural aggregates, aggregates of many, several areas of the brain that are highly interdependent within these networks. But of course, the networks themselves interact with other networks of the brain. And I would like to highlight in particular 3 core central brain networks, which are very, very important for regulating cognition, emotion, and the body as well. And really seems like a kind of hubs, major hubs in the interdependence between emotion and cognition and between mind and body. So the default mode network, which is very important when we project ourselves in the past or in the future, or just when we have this narrative or reference to ourselves, my story, for example, and so on. Then there is the salience network, very important for actually acting as an interface between body and mind, emotion and cognition, and really in the evaluation of the current situation of what is most salient in this moment. And also, it has a very important role in regulating the interplay of the other networks. And then there is the central executive network, which works with working memory, control of attention, and it's very relevant for when we intentionally we set our goals and we actually, for example, perform reasoning and so on. So it is interesting that when we look at the data from the effects of meditation and mindfulness training on the brain, that there is really, I think these three networks are really very much involved in these changes. And I would think that this is the case because by affecting these core, these hub networks, the practice of meditation can really influence via this dynamic interdependence several aspects of our cognition, of our affectivity, or the way in which we react emotionally to things, or just the influence in the way in which actually mind and body state interact with each other. For example, the hope is that with contemplative practice, with the practice of awareness, ethics, compassion, which can just be secular. It doesn't, we don't really need to become monastic ourselves, but just taking responsibility for our actions and for caring about our mind, brain, body system, I think we can have the possibility to shift from the negative, unhealthy mental states, like in the case of the three poisons that we have seen, or just this kind of ego prison that Albert Einstein was describing, just to open up more and more to the broad interdependence. So it's just an important shift from a narrow interdependence, this entanglement of in the reactivity chain that we have seen, in which we, without becoming even aware of this, we become stuck in greed, hatred, and delusion. But just to open up through the cultivation of meditative awareness, insight into the mechanisms of the mind-body system, and by also cultivating the so-called wholesome qualities of the mental state, like compassion, for example. Albert Einstein was really inspiring us to expand our circles of compassion in our mind-brain-body system, we could say. So I think it's time that as human beings, we take responsibility to care about our own mind-brain-body system, because this way we can improve our actions and making these actions more healthy for ourselves, for others, and for our world, for our planet. I think it's under our eyes that we are actually destroying the planet. We are destroying our ecosystem, also with destructive effects on really millions of other beings. So it's very important that we turn from a narrow dependence from some specific desire, aversions, to a broad view about interdependence, which is actually leading us toward more wisdom and universal compassion. So I thank you very, very much for for listening, for your kind attention, and for this beautiful opportunity of sharing. Thank you very, very much.
So now we go on with our question and answers session. But before that, I would like to apologize. We had a technical problem and I couldn't introduce properly Professor Antonino Raffone. So sorry, I'm sorry that.
No problem.
So I would like to do it now if it's possible. So Antonino Raffone completed his master in psychology and his doctorate in cognitive psychology and science at the Sapienza University of Rome, and he is currently associate professor at the Department of Psychology of Sapienza. But he is also visiting professor and advisory faculty at the Nalanda University in India. He is also director of the Inter-University Center at Sapienza and president of Consciousness, Mindfulness, Compassion International Association and chief editor of the specialty section of consciousness research of Frontiers of Psychology. His internationally recognized research is interdisciplinary, as we have seen in his presentation, with a particular focus on cognitive neurosciences of consciousness and meditation. So thank you very much. It was very, very interesting.
Thank you. Many thanks.
And we have a lot of questions. So I would like to start now with Dr. Phuntsog Wangmo with a question. So the question is, how do you understand the third noble truth, that is the extinction of suffering? I don't think, this is the question, that following the the eightfold noble path can lead a practitioner to a situation where you don't have any suffering, nor physical, nor moral or psychological. So I would like to understand, what do you mean? What is it for you, the extinction of suffering? Quite a challenging question, I think.
Thank you. I would say really thank you very much. Your question allowed me to clarifying something the previous the things. When I sort of like preparing this topic, the topic was big. So then I'm worried maybe if I go everything to the Tibetan medicine terminology, may not people get such a clear idea. So sort of like I borrowed the terminologies of the Four Noble Truth. Of course, Four Noble Truth, like a path of the suffering and the sort of like the stop of the suffering is permanent. The medicine is temporary, that's for sure. But the goal of the Tibetan, I mean, the not Tibetan medicine, but is any medicine, what we say is the mina one never do, but the now so one the kansa so what So if you want to be healthy, you need to study medicine. Does not mean you will become a doctor or things, but you need to understand a little bit of what is your body components and which kind of the body you have, or we call the personalities you have. Based on that, seasons, locations, lifestyles, temperatures, regions, age, and which kind of diet, behave you should follow. So the Buddhism, we say be aware all the time. Be aware of the three poison. Don't get too overwhelmed. But the Tibetan medicine is the same. Also, we say is like be aware for what? Your diet, your behave. So this is sort of like the, of course, as you said, it's we're not able to get out of all the suffering permanently, not. But as I said, is if you're not able to sleep, that brings a lot of suffering that we all know. Cause of the suffering, why is not sleep? is the energy of the wind is high. Good to know that. Now, how should do to get out of this issue? Simply use the nutmeg in your food. Use a little bit of cardamom. Eat a little bit of meat, which has the natural warm, oily, heavy. What the result of that? Lung energy access will go down. Meantime, the earth, water element, fire, which the deficiency will come up. Get into the balance. Once we get into the balance, then what will be the result? We have a good health. So that we can overcome. Once we do that, that's enough? No. The rest of the time, you need to be aware. So that's what I want to say. Thank you, your question.
Okay, thank you. So I think we can do one each. So now I have a question for Professor Raffone. So how is it possible to disidentify oneself from I, me, mine, if at the same time it is necessary to be present, to have cognition about ourselves in order to take responsibility for our feelings, actions, and thoughts? Could you explain from a scientific point of view how meditation can help for this?
Wow, really fundamental question. Thank you very, very much. But also not only fundamental question, but also difficult, very difficult question in terms of both practice, because it's in Zen, it's a kind of koan, no? It's like a koan. And of course, there is this kind of twist also in scientific terms. So in one sense, the evolution has programmed our brain, for example, to work like in wanting, grasping. It's kind of like a natural mechanism, or the same for the aversion, like the pain, for example. It's unpleasant, then there is the not wanting or wanting to avoid it, and then to run away. Of course, this is a natural conditioning, but unfortunately, there is also, on top of this natural part, there is also an over conditioning, which relates to, for example, addiction. We have made the example of addiction, or with our aversion, we can make things worse with the pain. So our pain increases rather than decreasing. And this over conditioning, which relates to perhaps this narrow view of ourselves, of our I, me, mine, in exceeding, over conditioned, and it's kind of narrow view about ourselves, about interdependence in a narrow way, that we suffer more. And including, as Dr. Wangmo was saying, our sleep, for example, also becomes worse, our physical health becomes worse. Then, of course, meditation is a very important instrument for us, but not only the meditation, our ethics as compassion, changing our values. We can still be capable to have food when we need food, to enjoy life, but at the same time avoid this aspect of ego attachment, and which is toxic for our mind and our body. Thank you.
Thank you. So now I have we have some time, so I have another question for Dr. Wangmo, and it is, which is the role of the space element in Tibetan medicine? Usually it is the element that encompasses the other ones. How it is taken into account in Tibetan medicine?
Okay, thank you. So the space element, when we're looking how they're related to the physical and emotional. So colored dagi nawa puginjur, so that the space element is related or facilitating all the cavities in the body, and also gives is that the tolerance of the mind, and also gives all the sound hearings. So kalepuga nawa dagi gyur, so all the cavities, physically, all the cavities aspect, emotionally, is that the tolerance aspect, and the sense organ aspect is to give the facility of the hearing sounds. The other hand, also, yes, as you said, is that the space element is helping to other four elements to give them to room to develop. So this is also the space element. Other hand, also, when we look at individual, each element is which is more connected, is the space element is more connected to our central channels or the central energy aspect.
Okay, thank you very much. And now I have a question from Professor Raffone. Are there in the brain special area for the perception of the self as a part of a whole, such as for the feeling and awareness of interdependence?
You and a very interesting question, and it's there is an important network in the brain that we have mentioned in which is the default mode network, which integrates a lot of information about our stories, our narratives, our self-views, and what others think about us, for example. So it's a kind of a refined network. But interestingly, this network is interdependent with the others. So in a sense, it's empty. Buddhist insights and psychology will say. So there is no really place in the brain where it is possible to find the self, because everything is dynamically interdependent. The network itself is an aggregate of vibrating neurons and activities which depend on other networks, which depend on hormones from the body state as well, from the environment. It's very important to highlight, for example, the beautiful view of Francisco Varela, Evan Thompson, about not only the interdependence between mind and body, or mind, brain, body, but also with the environment. So there is really no way in this interdependence in a broad sense to find a separated self. We can still, of course, we need the default mode network, and the brain needs to produce a self. But this self, which is produced in the brain, is dynamic, is a process. And when we lose this dynamic, real view about the self, this is called the right view in Buddhist psychology, and we have the wrong view about the self, ourselves as a fixed, separated thing, then we have a lot of problems in our lives, and I think we suffer. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think we have our last question for for Dr. Phuntsog Wangmo, as we have 5 minutes left, and this is quite, maybe I chose something that can be quite synthetical. Do the 5 elements play a role in determining also a fixed personality? For example, if someone is always aggressive, I assume he or she has a predominance of fire. How can the psychological personality side of a person be smooth or healed?
Mm-hmm. Thank you. It's a really interesting question. Our personality is the in the Tibetan medicine, we have 7 personalities. The reason to have this 7 personality, or reason to have the personality, is the one is that when we compose time, like the elements comes within the parents, the substance. This is one thing. And the second also maybe your karma. And then the another important part is during the pregnancy time, the mother's her diet, her behavior, her life circumstance is a big contributed to have the our personalities. So personality is it doesn't sound is it can be changed, but we can train. So this is also like a part of the be aware, be trained. So we can change the diet based on your personalities. We can change your behave based on your personalities. As you said, if someone aggressive anger, yes, it is. The person means is the fire element is predominant, everything aggressive, sharp. Good part would be very smart, active, but the bad part would be little aggressive. So this kind of case, what we need to do is more sort of like a gentle, opposite nature. We try to put more into your life. Does not mean it's how your life need to be, but it is a true changing part. So in an example, like do meditations, breathing exercise, not too much like moving, like active exercise, but it's like gentle, and also eat more sort of like cold neutral food instead of like eating a lot of chili pepper or garlic. This kind of, you try to use more like saffrons, chamomile tea. Instead of eating a lot of red meat, you try to eat some more like the vegetables. And important, you try to cultivate the practice of the avalokiteshvara or the compassion. You try to chanting more like a mantras of the compassions if you feel that way. So this is, and then also if you listen a music, don't listen something very rough, sort of like active music, more like gentle, soft, like flute. So this kind of way you can train, but important you need to be aware of. I have this tendency, so whenever circumstance comes, I need to be aware and then do an antidote for that. So long breathing is very useful for that. So what I'm saying is it doesn't sound permanently we can change our personality, but we can definitely train and then to control.
So thank you very much. I think we are at the end of our session. I would like to thank you for having participated. It's really, I think it was very, very interesting. And thanks to all the staff that organized this webinar and let us possible. And just I remind you to do the questions after when we close the sessions, and I give you an appointment for tomorrow. So see you tomorrow, this time at 2:30 Italian time. So thank you so
Thank you.
much. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye to everybody. Bye bye.
Thank you.